Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Box§Cast. I am, of course, Justin,
And I'm Mikko.
and today we'll be briefly discussing the Bahrain Grand Prix before moving on to the Chinese Grand Prix, and then we're going to briefly discuss the upcoming Spanish Grand Prix. So we couldn't get to the Box$Cast in time for Bahrain, unfortunately, to discuss the race because of the internet problems, which you guys are already well aware of at this point. So we're just going to briefly talk about that before moving on to the Chinese Grand Prix, which happened just yesterday on Sunday. And let's see here. So first of all, with in Bahrain, first of all, it was an amazing race. It was a
Yeah.
fantastic race. A lot of inter-team battles were going on, specifically with the two Mercedes, obviously. Just some really fantastic stuff. Lewis Hamilton, in the end, gave an amazing performance. Was able to defend against Rosberg, who was behind on the faster tire. He was on the options because of that late race safety car. It really messed things up for Hamilton, but he was able to defend in the end. It actually ended up working out really well for Red Bull, who ended up also on the option tires, much like Nico, for that final stint of the race after the safety car. So it was a really exciting race, pretty much from start to finish. One of the best races I've seen in recent memory.
Yeah, certainly after the bit boring end of the season from last year, so that was a really refreshing race to be honest. One of the also have to say one of the best races I've seen in a long time.
And how are you liking Bahrain as a night race?
Uh, I've seen. I think I watched one of the World Endurance Championship races when it wasn't wholly lit then.
Yeah,
They
it was
they
only
had
half lit, so that they
yeah
had to actually use their headlights.
yeah, I think the main straight it was lit, but the rest of the track it wasn't. So I mean I had no it worked fantastically well as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think it also helps a little bit with the tire wear. Bahrain has always been a really tough track on the tires
Yeah.
because of the temperatures and stuff like that. And I think having it at night helped with the tires, stopped them from overheating, helped with tire wear, helped with tire degradation, and allowed these drivers to really push each other to the limit rather than being forced to be concerned about their tires the whole race. It was just enough. You know, it's not like you could one stop the race. It certainly wasn't that amazing as far as the tire life was concerned, but it was better than in previous years, and as a result, we saw a lot more battling. So I think there are benefits for sure to the night race. I think it also helped with the time of day that it was on for a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially in the UK and Europe and stuff like that. I think it helped with me as well. I don't remember offhand, but I do remember watching the race live. So I think it was on at a pretty reasonable hour here in America, actually. It was a really, really strong race for Mercedes-powered engines, for sure. The Mercedes-powered teams really seem to have an advantage. Force India getting their second podium ever, Perez getting his fourth podium ever, and really great performance from him as well. He had Ricardo charging behind him in the Red Bull on the option tires going very fast, and he even admitted if the race had been one lap longer, he probably would not have been able to defend that position. But Perez put in an excellent performance. Hulkenberg as well. Let me see. I don't have it up, but I believe he got fifth in the
Yeah,
end.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got a really, I think that was one of their best results ever, if not the best result they've ever had. So, really strong performance from Force India. They did really well in Bahrain. And Perez proving that he's not just playing second fiddle to Nico. I still think in the long run, Nico will absolutely beat Perez. Just he has the consistency that Perez doesn't quite have, but Perez again getting his fourth podium, really impressive stuff from him. And really good battling between the two of them as well, actually, between Nico and Sergio. Some really nice stuff. Sergio proving again that he loves that turn four
Yeah.
in Sector 1 there. That was definitely a favorite passing location for several people, but especially Sergio. And the Red Bull, though, as we said, they ended up at the end of the race being on the right tire and having the right strategy and stuff like that. But their pace really seems to have improved since the start of the season.
I'm not sure what the reason is. If it's of course reliability and then getting on top of the ERS, but still uh, I'm not saying too surprised, but a little bit surprised to see Ricardo uh, really on top of Vettel at this point.
Yeah, I think he's outqualified him 3 out of 4 races at this point.
Yeah, something like that, and really being strong in the races as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we talked about before the season even started, really. We talked about the pressure getting to Vettel. Vettel is not used to fighting in an underpowered car, much like the rest of the grid is used to. So really, this season has kind of thrown him a huge curveball. I mean, it was a kind of a predictive curveball, though. I mean, really, he should have seen this coming, because clearly the team was struggling in preseason. But Ricardo seems to be handling the underpowered Red Bull a little bit better than his 4-time world champion teammate.
Yeah, we talked about how Ricardo's been used to the Toro Rosso, which might not be as competitive as the top teams, and then getting used to the fact that he really has to drive the car
Yeah,
to its limit, whereas Vettel could maybe
cruise.
yeah at some points yeah.
I mean, he was racing maybe for the first 3 or 4 laps of a race last season, and then it was just cruise control from there on out. When just like you said, I mean, again, pretty much everybody is used to battling in an underpowered car at this point. Nobody really had the pace of Red Bull last season, so for anybody to be competitive against a Red Bull took a lot of effort from themselves based on the machinery. So, yeah, it really seems like Ricardo is doing a much better job actually. And people were even talking about how in recent races, you can hear the depression in Vettel's voice. He's just so
Yeah.
sad. It's like, come on, man, you're a 4-time double world champion, and I mean, you're young and you're a millionaire, and you race in F1 as a living. So cheer up, okay? Things are not that bad. You just gotta work through it. And Vettel, I think, is maybe showing a little bit of immaturity there. I mean, but again, he's been spoiled, really. For the past at least 3 seasons, maybe not so much in 2010, but 2011 and on, he's been so dominant that he just expects every season to be like that at this point, and it's a little sad. It really is.
Yeah, we talked about this in the early part of the season, that if the pressure's getting to him, and I think we've seen some of those. I think he played it pretty cool the first 2 races,
Hmm.
but certainly in Bahrain and in China, we heard those couple of radio calls that were the little immaturity maybe
Yeah,
from him.
yeah. And of course, Bahrain was where we first saw the team orders from Red
Yeah.
Bull, this time not in Vettel's favor. That's worth talking about for a minute. In Bahrain, he was asked to move aside for teammate Daniel Ricciardo because Ricciardo was on the option tires. And Vettel was actually fine with that. And I tweeted out saying, somewhere in the world, Mark Webber right now is screaming at the TV, wondering why he couldn't get treatment like that. And so that was very interesting to see. That was uncharacteristic of Red Bull, first of all, to ask Vettel to move aside for somebody, and it was uncharacteristic of Vettel to actually comply. So we'll get back onto the team orders in China later on, but staying with Bahrain, that was very interesting. And Ricardo in the end did finish ahead of him once again in Bahrain and gave a fantastic performance. Let's talk quickly, just go over our GP predictor scores and percentages. We're not going to go over everything, but in the end, I got 61 points on the GP predictor with a 44% accuracy. One of my better races, actually. I think it moved me up quite a few ranks in a few different leagues. So not my worst race, certainly.
And I got 48 points with accuracy of 33. So I got most of the drivers right, but just out of position, really.
Okay, so and that one is actually your worst performance to date, right?
Yeah.
I think you got a lot more points in Australia and Malaysia,
Yeah.
so didn't go super well. But moving on to China, and since we were just talking about the team orders, let's just go ahead and pick up there. Vettel once again asked to move aside for Daniel, who was on fresher prime tires, albeit not that much fresher. If I remember correctly, they were only a couple laps fresher.
Yeah, they were. But Daniel did seem to have cleared the pace.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say about Ricardo, his demeanor on the team radio seems really professional, which is
Refreshing.
really good to hear.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a childish screaming into
No.
the radio. It's like understood and whatever. He like in Bahrain when he said something like, "We're losing time here." So
Yeah, we're
we have to
losing
make a
time.
decision.
Yeah, the way we're running now, we're losing time. He just said, exactly what was happening, basically,
Yeah,
without being a child about it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he definitely seems. I don't know his age off the top of my head, but it's most likely young to mid-20s. He definitely seems matured for sure. I think I think he maybe has more respect for the position that he's in.
Yeah.
Versus Vettel, he really appreciates being in the team more. He knows what they're doing for them. He knows how much money has been thrown in behind him into all the personnel and the equipment and everything like that. So I think he maybe just has a better mindset going into this season, and especially after the first 4 races. I think we're really starting to see the mindset difference between the two of them. It's really, really strange. I mean, Vettel was also crying on the radio about Kamui Kobayashi, who made an impressive move on him to unlap himself, and then did actually pull away from the 4-time world champion in that Caterham, and was able to stay away from him after that. But Vettel was really, really upset about that.
Yeah, I can understand his sentiment, but yeah, for a few laps the option tires were much quicker, but
Yeah,
he did have a point that he would get lapped, but it is in Kobayashi's.
Yeah, he's allowed to do that.
It's his right to pass him if he's
Absolutely.
able to pass him. Yeah.
Yeah, he is allowed to unlap himself, and clearly he was in the faster car at that moment anyway. So really, the best thing Vettel could have done is just try and let him by like a bag marker would, without losing too much time. Maybe just let him get DRS and go and fly by on the straight. But yeah, that was really interesting to see. As a Kobayashi fan, it was amazing to see, actually, for me personally. I think I tweeted pretty much immediately about that when it happened. Yeah, I said, Sebastian Kamui is faster than you. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. But Red Bull definitely seem to have improved. They are a podium level team for sure now. They're maybe not going to consistently get podiums. Fernando obviously got the the bottom step in China, which I believe both of us predicted on that one. The Ferrari, especially Alonso, seemed very quick in China. Alonso seems a bit of a China specialist. I don't know if you agree with that, but he really seems to go well there.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, compared to Kimi, it's really hard to say where he's losing all that time. So it's really strange to see two really good drivers, and then there's like a 1 second or 1.5 second gap between them.
Yeah,
So
it was very strange.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a couple of really good performances from Alonso in China, but you have to remember also that I think Kimi hasn't lost in qualifying to his teammate in China ever before this.
Oh, really?
So he's been really strong in China as well. So really must be really frustrating for Kimi.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people expected things to be a little bit closer between them going into this season. Of course, this is a team that Alonso has driven for years now, has a very strong bond with them. Very likely the car was basically built around him for this new
Yeah.
season, in spite of them bringing Kimi. All of their data from previous seasons, everything like that, it's all based off of Fernando. So it's very likely that the car is specific to him. So I'm not surprised that Fernando is beating him. I always thought Fernando probably would beat him. I didn't expect it to be by this much. I expected them to, trade races here and there. But in the end, I would have expected Fernando to finish higher in the championship a little bit. But I didn't expect this. I mean, Kimi is getting beaten by his teammate just about every race. A lot of times, not through no fault of his own. But yeah, it's definitely surprising. It's also a little surprising to me that Fernando is so good at this track because Fernando's driving style tends to be very jerky. He goes from no steering angle whatsoever to just full lock all the way to one side. And China is not really a track that you would expect that type of driving style to be beneficial. You would expect like a Jensen Button smoother style driver to excel at a track that has such long corners. But clearly, I mean, Rosberg as well has always seemed like a bit of a Chinese Grand Prix specialist. He got his first race win ever in China, of course, in 2012. And he didn't do exceptionally. He had problems, of course, but Hamilton did beat him in the end. So, but Fernando just really seems to go well here. He looked great in practice. Obviously, he finished one of the sessions as fastest. I don't remember if that was FP1 or FP2. But he was looking on it, just on it right away for the weekend. And I knew pretty soon that he was going to be a podium contender for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I predicted him to third place. So he looked really, really strong all weekend. And I don't know if we both predicted Rosberg to win.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think Hamilton had a really bad Friday, and they totally changed his setup, and
Yep.
then it just happened to work in the race.
If I'm
and
not
in
mistaken,
qualifying too.
Mercedes didn't even run in FP3 because it was a wet session, right? I don't think they ran either car, not even one lap.
I'm not sure because I actually didn't watch
Okay.
FP3.
If
so-
I'm not mistaken, FP3 Mercedes didn't even run because it was a wet session, which was very strange, especially because qualifying was predicted to be wet. Obviously, they were pretty comfortable with the setup that they had, and they would have known that Sunday race day would in fact be dry. I think it was a 10% chance of rain for the race, so it was definitely looking like it was going to be a dry race. So I'm thinking maybe they just set up the car for the dry, didn't even bother running in FP3 because it was wet, and then just kind of hope for the best in qualifying, which they got when Lewis got pole. But I have a feeling that Lewis's pace was there, or would have been there for FP3. But they maybe just were deciding to hide it, disguise it, but yeah, I thought Rosberg was going to get pole, and I thought he was going to get the race win.
Yeah, and well, in I have to say, really well controlled from Hamilton.
Yeah,
Just really, really in a class of its own for
Yeah.
most of the race, or whole of the race, I should say.
especially with the tire wear. I mean, he even came over the radio and said specifically, "I'm having no problems." I mean, that's
Yeah.
rare in a racing driver that they would call over the radio and say, "Hey, I'm fine actually. I could do 10 more laps if you want."
I think he did 18 laps or something
Yeah.
ridiculous with the soft tires in the first stint. So
Yeah, he
really
was
impressive.
he was losing time in the end though. He built out quite a nice gap, and then the people started pitting behind him, and they were putting in faster laps than him. Even though his tires were looking good and they felt good, they weren't providing the lap times that he would have needed to maintain that gap. So even though he could have probably even run even longer than 18 laps, they were forced to bring him in so that they could try and maintain a gap over second place. I don't remember who it was at the moment, but I think it may have been Fernando at that point. But yeah, they brought him in lap 18, I think, and he had like maybe a 6-second gap still. So he built out like a 12-second gap that got cut down because of the long first stint, and then he just built it right back up. But yeah, he really was in a class of his own. Now, we talked. I mentioned briefly here that Rosberg had problems. The team didn't have his telemetry information, if I'm not mistaken. At the very
Yeah.
least, they were missing his fuel information.
Yeah, and I think Valtteri Bottas also had that problem.
What was
And
really strange though was the FIA fuel readings, the graphic that came up on the screen. You know, for Bottas, obviously it was showing
yeah,
0.0 fuel used, but for Rosberg, it was showing how much fuel he was using, even though the team didn't have access to that information. And
yeah,
then I was watching the Sky one. I don't know, were you watching the Finnish TV?
yeah.
Yeah, on the Sky one, they mentioned how Mercedes aren't really sure how the FIA have access to his fuel readings, but they don't. So I think actually later in the race, Mercedes was actually using the onboard graphics, the graphics that show up on the FOM graphics that everyone sees. I think they were just going by that to plan out their strategy. Whereas early in the race, they were actually having Nico just read off his fuel levels to them.
Yeah, I think I was mentioned somewhere if it was Ted's notebook or some outlet where they said that the fuel sensor itself it has like two circuits where one of the circuits transmits to the teams and one to FOM. So that's how for Bottas both circuits failed. So
Oh.
they didn't see the even in the graphics. And for Rosberg, it just failed for the team's transmitter.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I gotta say, I was a little bit surprised when Rosberg came over the radio and said, you know, this is really annoying. And it's like, hey, man, these are the people that are trying to help you, you know, at least get second in this race, even if you can't catch Lewis. So maybe tone down the attitude a little bit when they ask you about how much fuel you have left in the car, because that is a little bit critical to ensuring that he comes home in a good scoring position. So I was a little bit surprised, but I can understand you know, his frustrations of having to look down at the screen. We saw in practice how difficult it can be for some drivers to look down at the screen while controlling the car, and that was on an outlap. So to do it at race speed is even more difficult. But Rosberg did a fantastic job to at least communicate that information, even if he was a little annoyed, which is understandable. But great job from the team. They get another 1-2. Hamilton gets his first hat trick, I believe. I heard Sky Sports saying it was his first time ever winning 3 races in a row.
Yeah, and you can just wonder what's there to stop them now if there's. Well, I have to say maybe Spain isn't such a power track.
Yeah, they have struggled there.
Yeah, especially if there's high tire wear, they might struggle again. But um, I think it would be suitable more for Red Bull because it's such a aero track, especially the first sector.
Absolutely.
So, well, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, really, really, still really ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, the Force India really didn't. I mean, they seemed more competitive in Bahrain. Just to move on down the grid a little bit, Force India put in a good performance with their drivers coming in 6th and 9th, so a double points finish for Force India. They get 10 constructors points for China. And it's not really a track that they expected to be strong at. I believe they were even downplaying expectations going into this race, because obviously there was a lot of hype and a lot of build-up as a result of their podium in Bahrain, and people were saying, hey, you know, is this going to be a regular thing now? And they were pretty adamant, saying that China was going to be a very different beast from Bahrain, and getting a podium in China was going to be a lot more difficult. So for Nico to get 6th and Sergio to get 9th, especially considering Sergio could only qualify 16th, was pretty impressive. But at the same time, they did not show the same sort of pace dominance that they showed in Bahrain. Nico kind of held on to that sixth place position rather than moving up to that sixth place position.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of battling. Bottas in the end was very close to closing Nico down. If it had been a couple laps longer, then he possibly would have gotten him. And same thing with Perez. Really, he was like stuck behind Viet for quite a while. And I mean, I was thinking about making a meme about him trying to pass Kvyat. I mean, it was starting to get ridiculous. I think like half the race he spent in either in his DRS range or just outside of his DRS range, which, you know, huge kudos to Viet because he did end up in the points as well. But it was a little surprising that it took as long as it did for Sergio to get by him. So again, a good race from Force India, but you know, nothing too amazing. But definitely an above average. You know, it's something they can feel happy about, especially considering that they didn't feel strong about the track.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for the last 15 or so laps, I think Perez was right around 3 to 5 seconds behind Kimi, but just couldn't reduce the gap at all.
I remember that actually. Yeah, apparently he was trying to catch Kimi in the closing stages, and the team were just telling him like, no, don't bother, just stay where you are.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure how Kimi would have enjoyed having Perez trying to pass him again after Monaco last year.
Or China.
Or China, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Or China last year, yeah. So I guess good for both of them that they managed to avoid that.
Yeah. So what about the Williams? Seemed to have better pace probably than Bahrain.
Yeah.
In some terms, well, they were in good form in Bahrain.
Yeah. I think they underperformed in Bahrain. I think they could have done better. I think the car was faster and the drivers were faster. It was just circumstances and whatnot.
Yeah, they had better, worse tire wear than others, and then were on the wrong tires in the end.
Right. Yeah, so, they were on the primes as well.
Yeah, and so Massa had that bad pit stop.
Really bad pit stop. That dropped him down to 22nd, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So really no chance to battle his way up there any longer. So,
and of course before that, and the cause of the bad pit stop was the contact with Alonso from the start of the race, or at least that was the hypothesis at the time, was that the wheel-to-wheel contact with Alonso is what damaged the wheel nut on Massa's car, which in turn led to that extremely long and agonizing pit stop. I mean, it's such a shame to see that as a spectator, and you just know that it's 10 times worse for the driver than what you're feeling as you're sitting there watching that. It's really gut wrenching. You know, when that was happening to Force India in Malaysia last year, same deal. You know, I didn't really feel too much one way or the other about either of their drivers, but when you see that kind of thing, that sort of basic thing, taking off a wheel nut, take a minute and a half. It's just it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And I think Massa was on he was going to probably get into the points. He looked pretty good that weekend. If I'm not did he out qualify Bottas?
I want to say they were pretty close at least.
Yeah.
Qualifying right around.
Yeah.
7th,
I would have to
6th.
find the qualifying information, but
I think 6th and 7th. But he did have a really good start again.
Yeah. Yeah, Massa had a fantastic start.
Again.
The contact, though, very surprising. It was a strange one. It really didn't feel like either of them was to blame. It didn't really look like Alonso was turning right. You know, they were just kind of going side by side, and then suddenly they touched. I think it looked a lot worse than it actually was. I think the fact that you know, there was like a little bit of an airborne factor to it that kind of made it look a lot crazier than it was. And then of course also the other Williams, Bottas, having contact with Nico, and then he practically went sideways into turn one and somehow managed to save it. That was one of the best moments of that race for me, was seeing how Bottas handled that contact with Nico. I mean, he was at like a 45-degree angle to pointing to the right, and somehow he managed to straighten the car and really not lose positions. It was an amazing start, and it's even more amazing that all four of these cars came off with no major damage besides Massa's wheel nut.
Yeah, really impressive. Now that I remember that, I think Massa's pit stop in the end was caused by the fact that they put the rear tires the wrong way around first.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, because the this year you're not allowed to reverse the tires.
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
because of the camber thing and the
I
tires
see that.
exploding.
Yeah, I see the
So-
interview with Autosport where Smedley said that they tried to fit the left on the right and vice versa.
Yeah,
I hadn't
because
realized that.
Yeah, the wheel nuts only they tighten to one direction, and they try to put the actual the wheel nut on. So when they tried to get it off, he was actually tightening it more.
Oh, okay.
So they were just wondering what the hell is going on, and then they figured out that actually they had the tires the wrong way around.
Yep, and I see that Smedley actually took the blame for that. Very good of Rob to do that. So yeah, that is really unfortunate. I believe in the race they had been speculating that the damage that it was a damaged wheel nut and that it was because of that contact. So actually, I guess there was in fact zero damage from either of those contacts at the start of the race, which just goes to show how sturdy these cars are, how strong they are. Clearly, they can take quite a punishment.
Yeah, I think someone said that Maldonado's been the main reason why Williams has such strong suspension nowadays.
That's really good. Okay, that's really good. Yeah, that would make sense though. So yeah, Williams is clearly used to building a much stronger car than is normally needed. But in the end, it pays off for both their drivers because again, they were a part of both of those incidents. But in the end, nobody got a penalty for it. They were both just racing incidents. And personally, I think that was the right decision. I don't think anyone was really to blame for anything there. It was what also really impressed me about those incidents, other than Bottas's recovery, was also Alonso's lack of caring. Alonso just he barely even noticed it. It was like a bug hit his windshield. He was like, no, get away. So I gotta win this. Excuse me, coming through. I mean, he's just unfazed by things, which is part of the reason that I think he is the most complete driver on the grid. Alonso, who I for some reason didn't like when I first started watching in 2012, he's just grown on me more and more, and it's just incidents like that that prove to me that he's something special. He's something else. He is not of this world. He is, an alien, as they would say in the sim racing world. Very, very intense stuff at that start. So besides the pit stop, though, Bottas did a good job in the race. Massa, though, probably would have been in the points as well, so he would have actually pushed a few people down a few positions, I think, without the incidents that he had. So what could have been a nice opportunity for Williams to try and get ahead of Force India in the Constructors' Championship sadly didn't turn out that way. Since Bottas was only able to get 7th, so they actually lost out on, I believe, 4 points to Force India in the Constructors' Championship. So, and of course, McLaren, neither of their cars finished in the points. Really, really surprising stuff from McLaren. They finished as the worst Mercedes-powered car on the grid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I heard that the Mercedes, the actual powertrain supplier, they had this new exhaust system, I think, for all the customer teams. So even in Bahrain, they had this new exhaust, and in McLaren's case, they didn't have the new side pods for them, so they had this massive open space between the actual side pod, the carbon fiber, and the exhaust. So I think someone said that they could even fit a briefcase inside
Oh my gosh.
the side pod, so they were just losing potential performance
Hmm.
from Mercedes. Of course, Mercedes had provided the exhausts for, or they had the knowledge. The team had the knowledge that the exhaust was coming, so they had the bodywork ready
Hmm.
for Bahrain, but all the other customers teams didn't have. So I'm not sure if McLaren even had the new side pods ready for this race,
Wow.
but just they were just nowhere.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, they dropped. They really did. Let me see if actually I can pull up. Yeah, I can pull up the qualifying results here. So they actually qualified only 12th and 15th. Magnussen just barely beating Sergio Perez. That was another great moment in the race, worth mentioning since it involves McLaren. Seeing Sergio Perez come up on Jenson Button and pass him in the Force India was really something interesting to see. Sergio probably right now is thanking his lucky stars that he actually got fired from McLaren, because
Yeah.
right now it's looking like a pretty good choice as. I believe after China, I think Force India is still in third in the championship at the moment.
Yeah.
They lost position. They lost. They're no longer in second, but still they're looking very strong. I mean, if they can maintain this, they'll probably be in the top 4 or 5 at the end of the season.
Yeah, and another good performance from, at least I was surprised to see Grosjean qualifying
Yeah.
or getting into Q3, but of course didn't finish in the end. Had some problem with the gearbox.
Yeah, no fourth gear. Unfortunately, it's a sequential gearbox, which means you have to shift through fourth gear even though it's no longer working, which probably was just complicating things and damaging things and stuff like that. I'm sure if he had been running around in 16th place with that problem, they would have retired him. But the fact that he was running around in 10th place with a pretty nice gap to Fiat in the Toro Rosso, they said just go, just keep going, just please God, get us a championship point for the love of God. We were getting podiums last year, and we can't even get 1 point now. I mean, I actually had Grosjean on the forum Dartmouth.com. I had Grosjean finishing in 10th because he qualified 10th, and you can do predictions up to the race start there. I really, truly thought that he was going to sneak a point in that race, and for a while it was looking like he was until those problems came.
Yeah, but it's good to see that they're finally making some progress.
Yeah, good.
Although
signs.
Maldonado's practice incident didn't help.
Incidents, plural.
Yeah.
He ended up crashing at the pit entrance. He had that off when he was looking down at that thing. And then I thought he had something else happen as well. Oh right, no, his car died at 1.2, but that one wasn't his fault. Okay, so the third incident actually wasn't his fault. That was the car. But actually, good race from Maldonado. Not words that I had been expecting to say for a while now, but good race from Maldonado. After having a terrible weekend too, he really just picked himself up by his bootstraps and just managed to put in a decent performance. In the end, I think he finished in 14th. 14th. But he did start in 22nd place as a result of not qualifying. So he did a good job. He got most positions gained. He gained 8 positions in the race. Of course, 2 of those 8 were DNFs, but still, good job from him to at least finish the race and move up and not have any incidents. So hopefully this is the start of a change with Pastor. I think he had a big head going into the season, and that it's just been slowly deflating. And I think right around now he's probably in the right mindset he needs to be in, because right now for Lotus it's a battle just for points or a point, for that matter.
Yeah. But good to see some
improvement though. Yeah.
improvement. Yeah.
At the very least, they seem to be able to compete with the Toro Rossos, and the Toro Rossos are, multiple points scorers at this point. Perfect segue. The Toro Rosso again gets Viet into the points. That's 3 races out of 4 now. That the young Russian has scored in F1. So he's doing a great job. He's scored in 75% of the races he's competed in Formula One. And the Toro Rosso again does seem really, really strong. It just seems to be a general all-around good car this season.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for them. And I actually expected a little bit more from Generic Verne.
Yeah, he qualified
because,
9th.
Yeah, he was really strong, but then I think he just lost 3 or more positions in the start.
Yeah.
And then it was just pretty anonymous after that.
Yeah, really didn't see much of him in the race. There wasn't a lot going on with him, so it's kind of hard to even say what happened in his race other than not much. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. I'm wondering if maybe he set up the car too much for the wet. Maybe focused too much on his telemetry from FP3 where it was pretty wet, and for qualifying, because he did qualify a lot better than Daniil, but in the race, as you said, he really just didn't seem to have the pace. So possibly went for too much of a wet setup there, and that could have been the issue. I'm not really sure his history at the track, so I can't say one way or another if normally he does better than this. But yeah, it was a little bit surprising because he looked strong in qualifying, and then, as you said, just really nowhere in the race, unfortunately.
And actually, I heard some speculation that if he just continues underperforming this first part of the season, that they might even bring Carlos Sainz Jr. into the team replacing him for the
wouldn't surprise me
of the season. Yeah, because I think Toro Rosso's done that before. Way back in, I think 2007 or 2009.
Yeah. Oh, was it Sebastian Bourdais?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think Bourdais just was not cutting it, and they ended up replacing him mid-season. Was that Vettel that replaced him?
Might have actually been, yeah.
I think it was Vettel that replaced him mid-season. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it's not surprising. Again, it's a development team. It was a little surprising that they kept Verne on for 2014 even. I've always kind of liked Jean-Eric Verne. I don't have a strong passion for him or anything like that, but he seems like a mature, pretty collected driver. He doesn't have a lot of incidents. He's not a Maldonado type. I've never felt like Verne doesn't belong here. He's reckless, anything like that. So I've always liked the guy, but I could totally understand if he continues to underperform, especially if he's going to continue to get beaten by the rookie. Then really, there's no benefit to having him around. Especially if the car is doing well, especially if Daniil is good at giving feedback, because that's the main reason to keep a veteran driver around, is to give good feedback and stuff like that to help improve the car. Even if the younger driver is faster, the veteran can help in other ways. But if Daniil is proving that he can take on that role as well, then there really is no use for him, which is one of the sadder things I've said on one of these Box*Casts, but that's the unfortunate truth. I think we've covered all the teams now, or just about everything.
Yeah.
It was impressive, though, that 20 of the cars finished in this race. It's really surprising that only 4 races into the season we're getting 20 out of 22 cars finishing the race, especially when you consider the types of problems we were seeing in the earlier parts of the season. So just got to say, really impressive stuff from all of the teams to get their cars reliable and not have a lot of DNFs. I'm sure there are some people who were really excited about all the DNFs that we were going to be seeing in 2014, but unfortunately, I mean, I can't even really think of the next main stress test. Maybe Singapore might be really bad for some of the teams, just because it's such a long, hot race and it's just really humid and stuff like that. So maybe Singapore might throw up a challenge. maybe Monza for some certain people. But so far, honestly, I really can't see the sort of problems that we were having earlier in the season. I think pretty much everyone's gotten on top of those, and it's all just focused on performance.
Yeah, although I think Spain is also a little bit of a stress test for the cars, and I'd say Monaco more for the drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Great segue though. Going into Spain, there's going to be a lot of upgrades as well. A lot of upgrades for teams are going to be coming. It's a very high downforce track with very high tire wear as well. I believe last year it was like 3 or even 4 stops for some teams.
Yeah. And also there's gonna be a test of the race. There was mid-season testing after Bahrain.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe there's gonna be another test after the Spanish Grand Prix, and I have to say, well, there's one long straight, and besides that, it's pretty high downforce. So
yeah,
it's really hard to say about Mercedes tire wear,
mm-hmm.
because they had such bad tire wear last year. So if it's gonna be hot, then I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bull were closer to Mercedes.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to dominate the Mercedes, regardless of what the tire wear is like, just because it's so much faster. If they have to do an extra pit stop, they could maybe even just still win the race by doing that extra pit stop. But as you said, I would expect Red Bull to be strong around here. Because of it being high downforce. It's universally accepted by just about everybody that Red Bull does still have the best downforce package out of all the teams. The main thing holding them back is the Renault power plant. And with the one long straight, as you mentioned, it's definitely a track that's going to suit the Red Bull more than previous tracks this season so far. Malaysia requires a good amount of downforce as well, but you get those 2 really, really, really long straights at the end and start of the lap, which loses them a lot of lap time, obviously. So Spain is going to be their first opportunity for a win. But I think, as you mentioned, Mercedes tire degradation and tire overheating, the temperature of the race, a lot of these things are going to factor into how easy or difficult it's going to be for Red Bull to try and challenge for that win.
I have to say one word on Red Bull. We talked about the straight line speeds in previous episodes, and I think I'm not sure it was in the qualifying speed trap times or the speed trap speeds. Red Bull were right at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
They had I think they had just a high downforce setting for both cars, and honestly, the difference between the Red Bulls and I think it was the Mercedes, it was 20 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, 20 kilometers an hour. That's huge.
Just insane, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's completely crazy. And I think that was because they were more on top of their aerodynamics in recent seasons. Like last year, they had their aerodynamics down so tightly. It was so clean. It was so efficient that they were able to actually produce a lot of downforce while producing low amounts of drag. With this season, they had to go kind of back to the drawing board, and now they have more of that like sort of dirty downforce, the stuff that might help you a lot in the corners, but is hurting loads in the straight. So I think possibly the narrower wing, stuff like that, is causing Red Bull to put on downforce that maybe isn't as efficient as it was in 2013.
And of course they have that court case over Dan Fallows at the moment brewing, so a little bit of aerodynamicist row going on, but not something to go too much over. For I think we've had plenty of court cases lately in F1.
Yeah, I think there's been
enough
hearings, probably. Yeah. Of course, Red Bull's hearing with the FIA, that was overturned. Really, I could have understood either way. It really, because I don't have access to the data that they provided and the evidence and stuff like that. So I wasn't really leaning one way or the other based on that one, but I completely understand how they need to enforce the rules, obviously. And if this one time even they say, oh, you know what, that's fine, we'll let it slip, then who knows how many other teams are going to follow suit. And you don't want chaos when it comes to F1 technical stuff, technical directives and whatnot. So you really want to have a clear line about what's allowed, what's not. And the FIA clearly drew that line in this case, and that should prevent a lot less problems in the future, though. I do want to briefly mention that Gene Haas is, of course, entering F1 now. They've said that they want to get a veteran F1 driver plus a young American, and that they're going to be based in the U.S. in North Carolina, which has been criticized by a lot of people as being ridiculous. In some ways, I would say it is. It's definitely better to be based in Europe for certain things. But these days, with modern F1, with the number of flyaway races that we have, it's definitely not as much of an issue as it would have been in previous years. Not a lot of teams have been successful out of Europe and the UK and whatnot. If any, really. I'm struggling to think of one now. But they're dedicated. They're probably, I predict, they're going to try and get Alexander Rossi to drive for them, regardless of how his GP2 season goes this year. However, though, if Rossi does really well in GP2 this year, he might get offered to drive by Caterham for 2015. That, of course, also, though, depends on if Caterham is still around in 2015. So there's a lot of speculation here, but I'm pretty sure Haas is going to try and pick up Rossi, as he has driven an F1 car as recently as 6 months ago. And then Rossi may or may not get a counter offer from Caterham to drive for them next year, which I think he might take the Caterham one, to be honest. Rossi already lives in the UK. He's already based out of there, and he's been driving for Caterham, which is a team that has given him a lot of opportunities. So I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to stay with Caterham rather than go over to Haas. But a lot of noise being made by Gene Haas about beating the Europeans at their own game, which is incredibly ridiculous. And I'm a little bit disappointed that he is portraying the typical American attitude of being better than everybody, even though we're really better than nobody. And he just seems to have a lot of talk right now. I'm hoping maybe he can back that up. It would be really nice if he could just jump into the midfield, but there's no way he's going to be challenging for podiums or wins or anything like that right out of the gate.
No, and I've understood, if I ever understood correctly, that they're gonna be buying their chassis from Dallara.
Mm-hmm.
So, just from that point of view, I think there was some recap of all the past times when somebody's bought a Formula One chassis from Dallara, so that they've like struggled to even score points, or they've had like 2 podiums or 1 podium in history of Dallara chassis in Formula One.
Now, Haas does have access to a lot of resources, so he might be able to take that as a base and work on it with them, to improve it, something like that. He owns a lot of manufacturing places and stuff like that. So if anybody is capable of improving it for them, it might be him. But again, as you said, it's not a great place to start.
Yeah. All right, should we go through the predictions?
Yes, yeah, we forgot to go over the China prediction results, so yeah, we'll go over that real quick. You beat me again, just narrowly that time, so I'll go first. I had Rosberg winning because I thought he was going to get pole, and I had Hamilton in second, so I only got 5 points for each of them, and unfortunately miss out on the 10 bonus points that come from accurately predicting the winner. However, I did accurately predict Alonso in third, Ricciardo in fourth, Vettel in fifth, and Hulkenberg in sixth. So that was 40 points right there. Unfortunately, though, if I had switched Hamilton and Rosberg, I would have gotten like an extra 60 bonus points. So that would have given me 125 instead of the 65 that I got. And then I had Perez in 10th, and he got ninth, so I got 5 points there. And I had Kimi in 7th, and he got 8th, so I got 5 points there as well. So 65 points, 57% accuracy. Unfortunately, though, it actually moved me down in the rankings. So I guess a lot of people did really well in the predictions for this race. Because unfortunately, even though I got those 65 points, I moved down 1,368 rank globally. Lost 4 positions in Alex Gillen's league and two positions in the AOR league.
Yeah, and I got 69 points with accuracy of 60, and I also have Rosberg in first, Hamilton second, then I got 10 points from Alonso in third, then Ricardo and Vettel. Then I had Button in sixth, then Kimi in seventh, where I got 5 points, then Hulkenberg 2 points, then Bottas 2 points, and then I had Daniel Kvyat in 10th.
Nice.
And if I just had Rosberg and Hamilton the reverse way around, then I would have had, I think, 100 points more. So that hurt a little bit.
Yeah, just a smidge. What did you accurately predict? Pole position, fastest lap positions gained?
I got pole position and fastest lap right, but I predicted Kobayashi to get positions gained.
Yeah,
I should have probably watched FP3 to get the Maldonado thing right, but although he didn't have really good practices. So.
Right. I mean, I didn't expect him to move up as high as he did. I thought maybe he'd get up to 17th or something like that, not all the way up to 14th. Yeah. I had Perez for positions gained, and he just narrowly missed out on that. He gained 7 positions in the race, moving up from 16th to 9th. So I was super close to getting right on that one. So a lot of what ifs from this one, unfortunately. What did that do for you as far as your ranking globally and in the leagues?
Well, my global rank, I dropped like 1,000 places, and then in Alex Gillen's league, I dropped 12 places, and in other leagues, I just pretty much stayed the same.
Oh, okay. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. We're not sure exactly when the next one will be. Maybe we'll do one before Spain, but certainly we'll be doing one after Spain. So at the very least, look out for that Spanish Grand Prix episode. And thank you ever so much for watching.
Yeah, we'll see you after Spain.